Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Authentic Audience Podcast. My name is Krista Ritma, and I am your host. This is part 2 of my episode with Emory Hall called Atithi, Deva, Bhava. And we talked last week for so long. We completely lost track of time diving into Nepal. And so we decided to split this week or this episode into 2. So this is part 2 of that conversation. We dive right back in, and this part of the episode focuses more on mental health, on some of Emory's new projects that she's got going on and things that she's doing that are making me just so proud to know her and be her friend. I'm so grateful for her. I'm so grateful for this conversation. Once we started talking about Nepal last week, we just sort of got into our own world, and next thing we knew, an hour had gone by. But I'm not mad about it. And also, my number one requested guest is Emory, and the number one topic people ask me about is Nepal. So, give the people what they want, I guess, right? So anyway, I love this conversation. I love Emory, and I love sort of the direction that this part 2 goes in. So thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy it. So lastly, I can pull up the questions, but the other thing that I did want to hit on and come back to a little bit just is around like mental health stuff, because a couple months ago you did a really brave thing, and I wanted to just talk about that because the response, I think, surprised you.
Yeah.
It was like very intense for you.
Yeah.
And what that is Emory shared publicly on her Instagram for the first time, loudly, I guess, or like so just directly that.
Was it loud?
Well, like you maybe like touched on like having bad days and whatever, but it wasn't like I suffer from anxiety and depression, period.
Right.
So it was like a statement. And obviously Emory and I are, in the woods together a lot of the time. So I knew this, and, you had this like skin cancer scare on your arm, and then the scar took forever to heal. And it was like really eating you alive, this whole experience. And out of the blue, one day you shared it. And people are used to seeing, the side that's the Nepal and the photography and the inspiration and the poetic, everything of who you are. But sharing this, tell me that experience of like sharing it and then the messages and just what happened.
Yeah, I think I hit a moment. For those who know astrology, I was exact degree Saturn return. I was sitting in the fire.
Super fun for everyone around her.
Oh, yeah. Wow. God bless everybody around me. But we all go through it, right? It's this 3-year kind of initiatory period of intense learning, which does not come without pain and struggle. And I was sitting in my exact degree and really in the depths of my anxiety and depression, which has in a lot of ways always been a part of my life or my adult life. When I lost my sister she was 12 and I was 8, and I was really extremely close to her. There was a lot of trauma from that, and then a lot of trauma that followed because we have quite a large family. My parents had 5 daughters. There was years of turmoil and still are. And I went through a lot of stuff, and depression and anxiety, like when I look back on it, has always kind of been there at varying degrees, and it's just a part of who I am. And that being said, I really haven't felt called to share that part of myself, not out of an inauthentic space of I want to present myself as this way or whatever. It was more just most people know me through Instagram, I guess, and the people that will be listening to this or whatever. And first and foremost, that platform for me has been a platform of sharing my art. And that's what I've used it as. It's my writing and it's my photography combined. And that is first and foremost what I want to share on that platform, because it's my creative expression. As much harm as Instagram can do, I actually love it because it's the marriage of my 2 great passions.
Yeah, we
right?
talked about that on your first episode, and I love that. Yeah. Like Emory, it's like the opposite of an influencer, right? It's like she literally just wants to share art and people are like, no, but who are you really? And then she's like, now she's like, fuck.
Like shit. But there was this moment to get back to the point, I think, where it did start to feel a little inauthentic for I guess my platform has been growing and just like I've been on Instagram for years at this point and I hadn't shared that part of myself. And I had only shared, like a lot of the highs or like relative highs, I guess. And in the depths of my own struggle with my anxiety and depression, had been scrolling through Instagram and over weeks or months had seen different people that I follow post about their experiences of it. And there were these little moments of like breaths for me of like, I'm not alone in this. And like that person goes through that, like shit, like that. Not that I would wish it on anybody, but it makes me feel less alone or less like marginalized or less like awkward and I was sitting down at the kitchen table, I'll never forget it. And I think you had posted about your anxiety and I had saw it. And I think it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back of like, I just feels in this moment, I feel really compelled to share that I struggle with this. And I don't know why, but I'm just going to do it because I need like that to come out now. And you know me, I'm like such a person with timing. Like it all has to feel right and intuitive. And it just did. And I don't know why. And to be totally frank with you, there was definitely a moment of like not wanting to put it out for fear of people looking at me differently. But I think I was able to catch myself because I was like, that is, if you follow, prey to that feeling, you are contributing to so much of the kind of pain that social media platforms inflict on people. Like you are a part of the problem if you won't post this because you don't want people to like look at you differently. Like, and so I had that moment. So I did. And I almost took it down.
Well, what happened after you posted it?
Well, I was getting there, KJ.
Well, I get there.
Gemini. This is our daily life.
Go back. You're doing so good.
The responses were in the thousands. It was too many for me to respond to. And it makes me want to cry now. I was so overwhelmed and a lot of people just said, thank you for sharing this. Some people got super real and were like, to be honest, like looking at your page all the time contributed to my depression because it made me feel like I couldn't ever have a life that I thought that you had. And that like was so real for me. And it wasn't easy. It was incredibly vulnerable. And I had like almost regretted and took it down like multiple times. But the response is, obviously what led me to keep it up and share it with people. And I just think that, I just hope that we live in a world one day where there isn't the, stigma or shame surrounding mental health, because I think it's like, especially these days, it is so a part of so many people's daily life, and how something is still so looked down upon or kept in this taboo corner where we're supposed to feel shame about it. So much of life happens to us. We live a lot of lives in our life, and it is not all rainbows and butterflies. And to not feel the emotional toll that, for me, burying my sister, or burying some of my best friends, or whatever it is, or the trauma of sickness, like for me not to like, I would be inhuman to not suffer from the things that I do after what I've been through in my life. And, that being said, I don't want to sound pitchy here, but really I am focusing on a book, and part of that book is going to be sharing that side of myself, because ultimately
you could never sound pitchy if you tried.
But on the real, like the depths of my suffering in my life matched the depth of my seeking.
Yeah.
And what I went through and my relationship with death specifically is what caused me to start to read about other cultures and their understandings of death, which is how I got introduced to Hinduism and Buddhism, which is how I got on a plane alone and flew to the other side of the world to try and come to terms with this thing that made me feel like when I was back at school, I was like made fun of, and I had this like scarlet letter, and I felt so awkward walking back into school after my sister passed, because she passed in August, and in September I had to go back to school. And I remember turning around and trying
back to school at 9 years old is hard enough without the whole town knowing that your sister just died.
Yeah. And I wanted to run away. I did, because there was no space that was created for me to understand her death in a way that was like natural or holistic or spiritual. It was just this end, this finality. And I was just to live with the depth and the void on my own as a young girl. And so for people to understand why Nepal, what it means, what it does for me, is to also understand what I went through in my life and what caused me to go there, because no one comes to these places. That's what I realized even on the trips. One of the takeaways was people come to that part of the world more often than not in a really vulnerable place.
I even say that about yoga. I'm like, nobody starts yoga because they're whole.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Or it goes on or whatever it is. It's so true. We approach these things often in our most vulnerable
moments. I'm good. Like, I'm good. I don't need any more growth right now. I mean, people seek these things out for a reason. So yeah, I just think like, obviously after hearing Emory's response to that, you can sort of sit with or see my battle here that I go through, because I know this Emory, and to me, it's such a sacred piece of her, but also like on a daily basis, like if one of us is having like a panic attack or feeling anxious, like she's my go-to, and vice versa. And she's talked me off ledges and I've talked her off ledges, and to be able to share about that openly, like it's like another level of that seeing you that I want people to experience, because not to say that you and Trevor don't have a beautiful life. It's so beautiful. But once I actually learned, the struggles of spirituality and the struggles of anxiety and mental health and what you really live, I'm like 10 times more inspired by you. And like getting to learn about Kristen, and then going to your family home and seeing how present she still is in your family's lives. It's like, it's just all became really real to me, like who you are and what you've gone through, even since our last podcast. And the fact that then you decided to share it, I'm just like, Jambu is happy. Let's just say that, like, it's like, because I'm learning from this person. And one thing that I don't know if it's a Gemini or what it is in my chart, but I'm called to share what I'm learning. Right. And so many times it's these deep lessons I'm learning from you or from Trev that like, it's not my story to tell. And it's like not my place to share that. And so when you do decide to do it, and I do also think, just coming back to that, full circle, that social media conversation, I don't think that you guys have a responsibility to share anything that you don't want to share, but I have had that experience of people looking up to or putting people on a pedestal. And I have worked with enough, like, I don't know what the word is. There's not even a word. I've worked with enough people with platforms that are large to know that it's not always what you see. Even with me, even small platforms, like it's never what you see all the time. And it doesn't mean it's not authentic. And it doesn't mean what they are sharing isn't true. It's just like, there's obviously a decision that went into sharing that. Right. And when, people do look up to you guys, I'm sometimes like, oh man, like, I'm so glad you shared more, or I'm so glad they're getting to know you guys more, because of course, like sacredness and privacy and all of these things are so important when you are well known and you do have a platform. And I'm finding that with these new clients I'm working with, but there's also an element of that, like those responses that you got of like, oh my God, it like gives me permission to be and feel the way I am, because this person I look up to also struggles with those things. And so, nobody said you're going to have a big platform and people are going to go crazy over your photos. And now you're going to have responsibility to those people to like, right. That's not a thing. And so when you do decide to share and pieces of yourself that to me have like healed me, I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. And I'm always going to like, champion that and support that. And I'm just really proud of you, because I know how hard that was. Yeah. For somebody like me, it's not actually that hard.
Right.
Like there's other things, which we won't get into right now, that are really hard.
Yeah.
But sharing about my anxiety, sharing openly about my mental health and struggles, I'm air. I want to communicate from the depths. And so you do it in a more poetic way, in a more thoughtful, intentional, like maybe you'll write about an experience and we'll get to read about it 5 years from now kind of way. Whereas I'm just like verbally processing as I go. And I think that's what makes, it's so beautiful and great, our friendship. But
yeah, but that's why everybody has everybody has their flavor that they bring to the cake or to the world. And I think we should honor all of them. And some people feel really compared to sell or share their whole lives on social media. And I don't, I don't diss that.
Even when people do that, they're still not sharing everything. And I think that's the most important thing.
That is the most important piece. I do agree with that. And I think that it's everybody has to find the balance for themselves. And for me, yes, I'm a vault and I'm a super private person, but that's like, for me, like so much of my life is sacred. And there's a part of me that feels like an energy is lost when I share it to the public. And that's just a reality that I sit with. It's not inauthenticity or me trying to hide, behind a persona of like trying to prove to people that I'm something. It's like, I don't feel compelled to share all of my life with people because it's so sacred to me. I don't want it to I revere it and cherish it. And I think that in the age of social media, I think there is, there's space for more of that conversation of understanding that parts of our lives can totally be private and not shared with people and probably should be. And I don't know, I'm definitely coming from one side of it and I have an opinion about it, but I just I really honor people, holding things close to their heart. And then also in those moments of it feeling like real and ripe, stepping through that doorway, but only when it feels authentic to you and real. Otherwise, the pressure should not be there.
No. And I think that that's just it. And I think you've also helped me a lot with that, like, especially around my spiritual practice. It's like way more sacred to me now. And I don't really post about it as much as I used to. And I think, when we first met, I was in like a different stage of like, oh my God, I know the secret. I want to share it with everyone. And now I'm like, I know the secret and I want to hold it so tight and close to my heart. And like,
yeah,
I think we go through phases too. And you don't have to share anything. And when you do share, it's really intentional. And that's kind of the last note I want to end on is this new sort of creative thing that you've been sharing. And that's Bashanti Paints. Because of all of the things that you have sort of shared or created, like Emory is an artist, like through and through. That's who she is and that's how she functions. And it doesn't like turn off when she's not taking a photo. She like thinks like an artist, shares like an artist, is moody like an artist, and
so moody
and all the things. And the cold vibes. There's nothing worse than Emory's cold vibes.
Oh God, do not.
Okay, but we're going to stick with the creative. And the thing that I mostly am so excited that you did decide to share, actually above the mental health, is, and I almost want to like share this video I have of you with your stupid iPad.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm not going to. But let's just say I have a lot of dirt over there. But
yeah, if things go south, I'm done because Krista has a lot of dirt.
I would never.
A lot.
Anyway, so basically she got an iPad and started painting on the iPad. And as a true artist, 1 hour of painting led to hours and hours and hours. And the paintings that were coming out were so good. And she was just sending them to me in clay. And I was like, this is so amazing. Like, I think you should start sharing them. Like, just do it anonymously. Like, just get these out there. Like, I don't care if your name's on it. Like, they're so beautiful. And I like want them on my wall. I want them on my ceiling. And also I'm not like just always like up Emory's butt. Like, I only say this if it's actually good. And it was though, it was like so good. And finally I was like, this is like Bashanti Paints. And do we want to explain Bashanti just like for a brief interlude?
Sure.
Yeah.
I like really didn't expect you to bring this up because it feels so like little.
I know, but it's so big for me, and I'll explain why.
It feels so little for me. I'm so interested to hear your thoughts.
But pop in with Bashanti really quick.
Bashanti, it's so funny because we just finished Navratri, which is the celebration of the 9 nights of the Divine Mother, which in the springtime it coincides with the start of spring. It's Bashant Panchami. So that's kind of the root of the word Bashanti. It means like divine spring. And when I was 21, I think 21, when I went to India and was studying there and kind of hopped off from my group and went to meet Trevor really for the first time and to the ashram that he was staying at, I walked into the door. It's the moment that my river changed course, so to say. Then he was just, a monk, the head of the ashram, but he would years later, become my guru. He sat me down at his feet and all the kids kind of piled on my lap. And he said, what's your name? And I said, Emory. And like, that's not a common name. He was like, no, I can't even pronounce this. And within 10 minutes of meeting me, he gave me the name Bashanti.
So that's when we're on that side of the world. That's what Emory goes by. So our guides and Nepali family all call her Bashanti, and I call her that when I'm like speaking to a specific version of her. That's what I call her. And when I felt this art, I was like, this is Bashanti paints, like Bashanti's painting. And so I was like, that's what you should call this account. Like that's how I felt when I felt her painting, like that version of her. And so
I never knew that.
Yeah, that's why I said that.
I love that.
Yeah. So she, unbeknownst to me, because I was like, I throw her a lot of like ideas, I guess. Like you should,
I listen to maybe like, I don't know,
like 1 out of 10. Like I guess I throw her a lot of you shoulds. Like you should try this, or you should do this, or you should post this, or you should create this. I'm like constantly, because as much as I love them and they're my best friends, I'm also like in the best interest of who they are. And Trevor and Emory's business is growing, and any idea I have, I'm like, post that, share that, do that, to help them out. And I saw this painting and I was like, this is something. So a week later, she's like, post on Instagram on Emory Hall, like follow Bashanti Paints, like blah, blah. And I'm like, really?
Really?
and you post it and it's like this new thing, and it's so vulnerable to share like this totally new thing. Like you're this fucking painter now. And I'm like, how do we monetize this? People are going to want them. Da, 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 da. Like just such a psycho. And then Trev did it too. And his is Rampriya art. And it's just like this little gateway into their souls, like their mantras, their experience that like requires no words. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think that was, to me, the thing that I was most proud of over the last 6 months is you like sharing that and owning it, that like I'm a fucking artist and I know
that's so funny because like there was like as little ego as possible involved, because I was there like in the sense of like, it wasn't a big deal for me because I have no intention with it, which is actually the beauty of those paintings for me. For my experience of painting is that there is absolutely no intention except for the intention of creation. Of course, as a photographer, when I'm taking photos, I'm either taking it for a magazine or I'm taking it because they're going to be sold as prints later. Or if I'm writing, if it's not just a meditation, then it's like going towards a book. It's something I'm going to have to package and put out into the world to help support my life. But Bashanti Paints really just, there's no intention with it at all. That's why I'm surprised you brought it up, to be honest.
But that therein lies the magic, I think. And I've harped on this so many times, and it's such a beautiful sort of note to end on, is when you do create just to simply create, there's a magic that you can feel around it. And that's how I felt when I started getting these texts of, your paintings. And though, I think eventually it could be a form of revenue for you, because I want one like huge on my wall. So I need a place to be able to go order it. But at the end of the day, when something is so real, like these Nepal trips, like when you start going to Nepal, there's no fucking intention of leading trips with like, it's just, so I always try to create from that place of like, how can I be of service, or how can I just create? And I know you're sick of hearing about it, but for me, that was my playlist.
No, I saw it in you. I love to like give you shit because,
I know.
Whatever. But it's like when I see you get around something or inspired by something that has nothing to do with like the phone calls and the consults and the whatever, it brings me a lot of joy. And I think as your best friend, I hope that you create more of that in your day-to-day life. Because
of course,
you also are an artist. That's what people don't understand. I think we put each other in boxes, right? Like you're a marketing agency and that's what you do. But like there is an art to that. There's an art to, our friends that play sports. Like it's an art form.
Oh, I said that last night. I said watching my friend play football, I was like, I felt God in that throw. And
yes.
I really did. It's magic. So yeah. And I think for me, the playlist, of course, with my marketing brain, I was like, how can I share this? But the original intention, right, was just to create a playlist to create it. And then I shared it. So with Bashanti Pains, it was like the original intention is what matters. And it was to share. It wasn't to share.
It was not
to create. And then I'm like, we got to share it. And then I'm like, I really want to buy one, so other people will. But that doesn't take away from that nugget of intention is where it all matters, right? Like it all comes back to like, well, why is this here and why did this get created? So yeah, but
ultimately we're all instruments, right? Like the word of art. Hello, if you haven't read that and you're an artist,
of you shoulds.
Krista has told me about this book forever. And if you're an artist or anybody creative, or I think everybody's creative. If you haven't read The War of Art, you must immediately, because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I talked about it on last week's episode too. So
yeah, we're as long as we can be the instrument and put ourselves in the ego aside, then that's the beauty.
So I'm just like grateful for the check-in. And I think this was such a beautiful conversation, or just around like, trusting and surrendering. And the last story that I was kind of thinking about was when you were telling the Bashanti story is my Copila story. Because I've shared on here with Maggie, because her school is called Copila, right?
I know.
So I've shared that my Nepali name is Copila, but the funny story around like that name and the whole thing, and it's kind of a perfect thing to end on because it's what Emory really teaches me, is like, it's a joke because I'm really attached to my spiritual practice, right? And like the whole point of having a spiritual practice is detachment. So it's like a joke that Trev and Em and Clay have, because I'm like very attached to finding a guru. I'm very attached to my spiritual experience, and that therein lies the joke, right? And like a part of that is there's this Baba in Nepal that I love, and Emory's taken me to see him many times, and I'm like obsessed with him and like can't wait to see him. Come to find out last time that he's a wandering Baba and nobody knows where he lives and nobody knows his real name, so I'll probably never see him again. And it's like and therein lies the Leela.
Therein lies the teaching.
Yeah, so therein lies like my Leela, right? And then sure enough, when I let go of the idea of seeing him again, it turns out when we went back to sit with the Babas that last time, he was there. And he was like, I connected with him more than ever that time, but I had completely let go of it. And it's so fucking annoying. But another thing that I was attached to is a Nepali name, because everyone calls Emory Bashanti, and a lot of the people on our trips got like these like surrogate amas, that they stayed with in the village, and they all got names, and I didn't get one.
Of course, though. Of course.
So I'm like, here I am, like so
sulking, like backstory, sulking, like going to bed with the sob story of the name.
Like I'm not deserving. Yeah. And my guru doesn't like want to find me because I can't let go. Like just the whole works. I mean, talk about like spiritual turmoil. I go to a crazy place, and Emory's it's just like this whole thing, because we'll call Trevor, like who's home, and I'm just like, Trevor, like from Nepal, and he's like, KJ, like I don't know what to tell you, and it's just like this.
The seeking is enough, KJ.
The seeking is enough, KJ, and like whatever. So then finally, on our last time in the village, we went back, and I think Emory, you sort of said to Amma, Krista doesn't have a Nepali name or something. And she just looked at me and she just stared at me and was like, Kopila. And it means to bloom, which is like so spot on. And I got the name after I had let go of the idea, right, of getting the name. It came back to me. And so now we're kind of like Kopila and Bashanti. So whenever I refer to like the Nepali versions of us, that's what I refer to us as, because it is different to me. It's a different essence. It's a different like energy when you use those names. And I am very grateful and still very attached, yes, to my name.
But you got it.
But I got it. So I just thought that was nice to end on, because it's such a Leela, right? It's such a story, and everything that you guys teach us about like the timing of when you share and, you know, who you are as a person and as a friend. And what I love seeing is like other people seeing it. And when I posted last week, like, what should I mean, this is a regular thing when I post like a story that has nothing to do with Emory or Trevor, I get like 10 DMs like about Emory and Trevor. Like I'll be wearing a sweatshirt of Trevor's trying to say something like profound, you know, and like meaningful about marketing. And like 10 of the things are like, what size is your sweatshirt? Like, God damn it.
It takes over our lives. Mine too.
But it was a resounding, when I shared what should I talk about on the podcast, it was a resounding, when's Emory coming back on, and like Nepal. So
well, I think we did
beautiful. It. We did it. And I'm just so, there's not really a call to action or anything to end on, but if you are in Emory's world, you'll know about the next trip and her book and everything after that. But for now, yeah, is there anything else that you want to say? Anything you're being called to share?
I think the words that are coming to right now are just like, be easy with yourself. Yeah. It's just like, we've definitely like ridden so many, like a roller coaster on this episode and gone to a lot of places, but it's so funny because when we hit end, we're like back in this weird reality of isolation. And
I know, for the last hour, I
totally forgot. And that's, I think, one thing we touched on last night was like, I was so tired of talking yesterday that like we both didn't want to do the podcast. And I realized that like all the FaceTimes and video chats were just like helping me get out of the reality of what we're actually sitting in, which is like, it's fine. It can be healthy, but I just really encourage people to be easy with themselves and take a break from the news, because if you're staying at home and doing the things you can to stay safe, then there's, you know, not so much else that we need to know. Just stay informed but then leave it all, you know, just do your best.
There's no new information.
No, it's just
that will like, you know, benefit you or save you, I think. And I think that's a really good point. And I think just being easy, like you're such a good reminder for me to do that. And I think we all need a reminder. And it was so nice to just like check out and, you know, talk about Nepal and drop in with you and, you know, have a glass of alcohol. And it's still light out because fuck it. We just decided to do it. Like, it's okay. You can be all of the things. And I think that's what Emory has really taught me and continues to teach me, is like, you can so be all of the things. And she is, and champions me to be. So how about we wrap this up?
Yeah. Ram Ram. Jai Ma. Jai Hanuman. Tomorrow's Hanuman Jayanti.
And did you know today is Ram Dass's birthday?
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course. Jai Ram Das.
Jai Ram Das. What a life.
Be here now. That's all we got to do. Be easy and be here now. Those are the mantras.
Amen. I love you.
I love you so much. I'll talk to you in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to hit record and I'm going to hit stop and we're just going to keep going. But for everybody listening, this was a long one and I applaud you for being here. I was thinking that it was going to be really long and I was like, oh my God, maybe I'll release it in 3 parts. Like
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. And so I might like have a cliffhanger and not release this all at once. So we'll see. But for everybody here and hanging on and, you know, curious about Nepal, and you're on this podcast listening to this for a reason and hearing these words for a reason. And I I never forget that when we're speaking, that like we're speaking to somebody that's going to hear this and it's for you. Like this episode is for you. We can talk for our health all day long on FaceTime, but this was like intentional to give them what they need. So I hope you got what you needed.
I hope so too.
Until next time, what do we say, Em?
Time off.
Keep growing.
Oh, this is Emory Hall for the Authentic Audience podcast, and keep growing.